The clinic is open. The financial clinic. Bench nimeweka hapo nje kama kawaida. Tumeipanguza, tumeisanitize. We are ready for you as always. This past month, now we are in a new month, but we have to finish. We've been looking at cars and buying cars and purchasing a car. And we wrap up this series by looking at classic cars. Or are they just money pits? Bottomless pit. Pesa inaingiaga hapo na haijai. I've got two amazing gentlemen in studio with me via Zoom. I've got Dan Kasiki. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, sir. How are you doing yourself?
I'm very fine. Karibu sana, it's good to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be back as well.
Awesome. I also have Steve Waroi. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm very fine. I finally got you on my show.
Imagine.
Both these two gentlemen are car enthusiasts. Wanapenda magari sana. So they are the best people to tell us about this. You know, there's this analogy, Dan, that older cars are cheaper. Unanunua kamkebe mahali, unakaresto, unaweka barabarani. Life goes on. It's cheaper and it's manageable. Is that a truth or is that just a myth?
I feel compelled to first define the difference between a classic car and an old car.
I knew. In fact, I was thinking Steve was the one who would begin there. Kumbe wewe unakuwaga namna hiyo pia. Talk to us. What is classic? What
I
is
think
old?
when we're talking about classic cars here, we're talking about vehicles that will ideally sell for more money now, maybe 10, 30 more years after they were made than the price when the vehicle was new back in the day. So I think that to me is what I'll define as a classic car.
Mm-hmm.
Old cars, on the other hand, the thing cost 1.5 million 10 years ago. Now it costs 200,000. So those are two very different kinds of buyers, I think, when it comes to looking at old cars and classic cars.
Mm-hmm. So how do you determine which is old and which is classic? For watu wa kawaida kama mimi, bora ni mzee ni mzee.
I don't believe it's bora ni mzee ni mzee. Cars age differently, and it's a known fact. There are vehicles that if I told you today, go find me a BMW with a number plate KAA to KSZ, I'm sure you'll find a lot less than you'll find Mercedes Benzes with that same range of number plates. So cars do age differently. So I think now when it comes to the myth of cheaper cars, old cars are cheaper to keep. That's when we now come back to what kind of buyer are you? Are you a rich guy looking for a toy that's willing to spend millions of shillings on 1950s Rolls or like that 78 Beetle? Or are you just the kind of guy that has been saving for 5 years? Now you have some 200K somewhere and you're like, hey, I need to be driving now. So you see, those are two very different schools of thoughts when it comes to buying old cars. Also, those who buy these old cars to restore them so that they can sell them. So they don't necessarily care for owning these cars. To them, it's just a way of making money. So I think those are three different buyers or three different kinds of people who buy these old cars or classic cars, as it were, depending on your definition.
Okay, I like that definition. Steve, maybe you can weigh in on this. There's something that Dan said there. Are you a loaded guy who's just looking for a toy that you can work with? Ama ulikuwa una save for 5 years, umepata so mbili, now you're thinking, let me get something that I can work with. I know, Steve, you restore cars. So do you interact with this different kind of buyers? And are some people confused about what kind of a buyer they want? They are, rather.
Okay. What I'm seeing in the scene nowadays is people who are getting into the scene now are more intentional in what they're looking for.
Okay.
They've done their research. They know the value of the car, and they know how they want the car to look like. But looking back in the day when we were getting into the scene, I believe, and you, Percy, we looked for the cheapest car available, and that's how most of us found ourselves with that. Literally, what Dan was saying about an old car. Yeah, we looked at what's the cheapest car we can get and put it on the road. But that has slowly morphed into a bigger scene now, and we are seeing guys being very intentional about what they want to drive.
The reason I'm asking this question is because, and I'm sure both of you have seen this, I've seen sometimes somebody posts a car on some of these social media pages that we all belong to, and they've put a price there. And I go to the comments, and people start saying things like, that one, even 20K I can't give you. Maybe the guy is asking for 500,000, 600K. And some people down there are saying, that one, even 50K I cannot give you. That is an old junk. So that's why I'm asking this question. Because the myth is, if it's old, it must be cheap. And it's easy to just get it at a good price, restore it, work with it. Dan.
Okay.
I think that brings us into one of the Kenyans' favorite phrases is "I'm disposing my car." Well, the term "disposing" is in its own carries weight, meaning that it's something of no value. Mm-hmm. So there are those people who have used and abused their car so much that you look at the thing, you turn it on, it's a struggle, the engine is not running smooth. Then you're like, maybe 50,000, 200,000 at the most. But there are those people who have that KAA or that KXW, and you turn that thing on, and on the first crank, it runs, and you look at the exhaust, it's putting out water, the interior is well maintained, there isn't rust in it. So looking at things like those are things that could easily have the same model and year of a vehicle range between that, even 20,000 I can't give you. And maybe I'm willing to pay 400K for this. It's well maintained.
Okay. Steve, is it easy to restore a car? I know you're a Volkswagen guy, and there are pictures you like posting of your VW Beetle, how it was when you bought it. And it's actually, I think it's won some prizes for you in the classic car competition. So how hard or how easy, how expensive or how manageable is it to restore a car of that magnitude?
To restore a car of that magnitude is quite expensive. Mm-hmm. It's not a race. It's not an easy race. How I know that is I restored mine slowly over the years. I've had it since 2002.
How much did you buy it for?
I got it for like 50K.
Okay.
As I told you that time, I was looking for whatever was most affordable. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the other day I did a similar build, mm-hmm. a similar build to like really close to what my car is, because the person really wanted to mirror what I have.
Yeah.
And when we did the math on the parts alone, the parts were going to like 3 million shillings.
What?
Yep. Without now, before you put in labor and time. And that was just initial parts. Obviously, as you know, there are other parts which keep popping up, mm-hmm. like you discover you forgot something or you overlooked something, and I'm sure we'll still need to get a few more parts for it.
3
so
million.
It's not very cheap. Sometimes it's cheap depending on what level of restoration you want.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Dan, hapa ndio naona mtu anakosanaga na bibi. 3 million, Bob.
It's
you want to put into that junk.
Somebody defined.
So you just buy another car.
Your vehicle. Sorry?
I'm saying the wife or even your friends would tell you, why would you want to pour 3 million, Bob, into this piece of metal? So you just buy a nice, decent car. Now, uendelee na maisha. Why are you wasting money?
Yeah, well, first of all, that statement tells you and confirms what Steve just said, that all cars are a commitment. They require time, they require money. Sometimes the proportion varies, because if you have money, then time is not a problem. You can have somebody else do it for you. But if you're doing it yourself, then they definitely require a lot of time and commitment for you to bring that through. But now that brings us back to what value you put on it, what value you pin to this particular vehicle. Mm-hmm. And that is why some people are willing to pay 3 million, Bob, for a 79 Beetle to be restored to good running order, while somebody else is like, even that ex-Japan, my budget is 700K. And those are two very different kinds of people. I think that's where now we move into the realm of, are you looking for a toy? Are you looking for a functional daily driver that moves you from point A to B with the least costs and least amount spent on maintenance and repair?
Okay. Is it important to have your spouse in agreement with this dangerous habit that can break a home?
I think anybody married would very easily know that when it comes to finances and things like those, the answer is most definitely you want to consult.
The way both of you are smiling and shaking your heads, kuna ka story hapo. Hebu
How
tuambieni
you
hapo
will
ka story.
convince them, that is a different matter altogether.
Steve, it seems like you have a story on this aspect. Hebu tuambie, how did you get your wife to come alongside you in this journey?
Well, for a long time, she was against it. Like, she didn't see the sense why I kept pumping money into the car. And yet we could get a cheap Toyota for like 300, 400K, a premio nyoka, reliable, as Dan is saying. But for me, it's about soul. It's about connecting with the car that you're driving. You're not just driving a piece of, like you're saying, a piece of metal, but the car means something to you. Like, because I always tell people, the car you drive tells a lot about you. Yeah. If you come and park your car somewhere, like outside the mall, and step out, I can be able to tell what kind of a person you are by the kind of car you're driving.
Really?
So, so to get the wife on board took quite a long process, and at some point we worked on her dad's car, her dad's first car.
Okay.
And when she got to understand the process and the love and what it takes to take the car from point A to point B, and now I'm on board. But it's not an easy journey. I've seen many people fight and have major disagreements over restoring cars.
One of the things I also see, and I've been part of this journey, and I knew Steve many years ago. Both of us have a love for Volkswagens, but yake ni zaidi ya yangu. Mi bado ni amateur. Yeah, ameenda the big leagues. So Dan, I've seen this, and I know probably you've seen this, where this old car means every weekend uko kwa garage. What kind of life is that? You're spending money and you're spending time. You know, every Saturday your wife is giving you that look. Don't tell me again today you're going to the garage. I mean, is it worth it?
All right. Well, before I answer that, just to add on what Steve said previously on the previous question is, they say that the difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. So that should sum up that bit. Why men would do some of these things. I mean, sometimes it goes all the way back to your childhood. And yeah, if you're finding yourself at the garage every weekend, then you probably made a mistake when it comes to what you purchased.
Okay.
Or as Steve is probably saying, he's had his from 2002, so he's been doing it slowly. So when you get a bit of tunes here, you go and put in a new transmission or gearbox. You get a little bit of money here, you go to repair the interior. So those are two kinds of people that might be at the garage often. But if your vehicle on Monday worked well, Tuesday worked well, Wednesday it broke down, so it has to spend a few nights at the garage, and that's where you're on Saturday, then you probably made a mistake when it comes to purchasing that. Now, which brings us to the point of what to look for and what are you looking for when you are selecting that vehicle.
Yeah.
And from the onset, did you do your due diligence in terms of what problems this vehicle is known to have? You know, the beauty with old cars is there's a lot of information out there on known regular problems. There are vehicle manufacturers that issue recalls, for example, on specific parts. There's some that were never fixed and the problem keeps reoccurring. So, you know, now we delve into the territory of how well you did your due diligence when it comes to purchasing the vehicle that is now building your mechanic's house as it is destroying yours.
I like that. Shortly, we'll talk about common mistakes, Steve. Common mistakes that people make when they are getting into this field, you know, of car restorations. And, does it matter whether you're building a show car or a daily use kind of car? So what are some common mistakes that you have seen people making in this area? If you have any questions for us today, 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. If you are one of those people who share the love for classic cars like my guest today, tell me, what are you driving currently on the same numbers? Japs, you have sent in an SMS today. Japs, how are you doing? Leo umetuma SMS kwa show yangu. Ubarikiwe sana. You say, I'm here to add to this classic car discussion. Classic cars gets you to focus on building it rather than focusing on other social stunts that may not necessarily add any value to your life. Okay, that's a good thought right there. So, back to the discussion, Steve. What are some common mistakes you've seen people making that really cost them money? People who are new into this area of car restoration.
One big mistake I see people making is lack of doing due diligence, like Dan mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like people just dive in without consulting other people who have similar cars or builds, without doing research on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
like finding out what are the problems this car is prone to. What is it a reliable car? Do I need what's the average cost of restoring it into properly functioning car?
Mm-hmm.
And then you find midway in the restoration, they discover quite a number of people abandon projects.
Yeah.
So that's why you find in garages, you find like a huge bunch, like a good percentage of cars have been abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all because of poor planning, poor projections. You think this is an old car, the parts should be cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But then, for example, if you're restoring a VW, you should know that the older the VW is, the more expensive the parts are.
Yeah.
So like a difference of 5 years in models can mean twice the costs in parts.
Mm-hmm.
So like you need to do your research well and know it's like a romantic excuse me, it's like a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to invest your heart and whatever comes your way, you are sure.
Yes.
Even if hard times come, you'll not bail out. Yeah. So,
what about the time factor? Because from what you've said about your car, it took you quite a while. You said you got it in 2002.
yes.
Because I've also seen people who get this car they want to restore, and they want to do everything in a month, and eventually they end up abandoning the project.
Yes, that's also another major overlooked factor
Mm-hmm.
about time. Like, I know, for example, there's a guy who worked on his car for 13 years.
13?
13. I think you know him. There's a guy called Bharat.
Yes.
My buddy.
Yes.
Yeah, he worked on his Beetle for 13 years. And when you see the car,
Mm-hmm.
it shows it's a very, very well done car because he had time to look at every aspect slowly and properly.
Mm-hmm.
But then now you find, as you're saying, someone will see Bharat's car and say, I want such a car in a month.
Yeah.
Which is not technically possible. There are these car restoration shows on TV,
Mm-hmm.
on Netflix, and
Yeah.
on the internet that you see people strip a car, bring in parts, and in like one episode, they've put back the car together and
Yes.
sold it for. So you're like, this is very easy. But then you don't realize there is an aspect of looking for parts,
Mm-hmm.
importing parts. There is an aspect of cost of those parts.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you may not have the money to buy all the parts needed at a go, and you may need to break it down. So you may need a financial plan to say, I'll buy this batch of parts first, then later on, I'll after a month or two, I'll do this, then later on. So people don't have that plan. Many people don't have that plan, and they just think, if I have $500,000, I'll clear.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go in and you don't have enough money, and you have to prolong your project,
Okay.
which becomes even more costly in the long run.
Wow. Dan, I'm just wondering, is this an expensive hobby? Because I've seen people who try to do it cheaply. You know the guys who tell you, I know a guy who can do it cheaper. Najua jamaa hapa Grogon. Atakufixia hii kitu. One afternoon itaisha. So is this an expensive hobby?
When it comes to classic cars, yes, it definitely is an expensive hobby. And as Steve has said, the budget is one of the biggest mistakes people make. You simply consider the purchase price of a vehicle. He got in 50K, he got in 200K. And you do not factor in how much you will need to pump into that vehicle. The other mistake some people will make is you didn't get a professional mechanic to inspect this vehicle.
Yes.
So you thought you were simply going to repair the interior, maybe a few shocks here, then you realize the gearbox is short. The engine has knocked a few times in the past. It has had its head gasket replaced twice in the past. So now you realize that in the end, if you want this as a daily driver, you're having to purchase a new engine in it. You're having to put in a new transmission, which usually these things cost a lot of money. Now, another thing that is mostly overlooked by most people, even with buying new cars, is the cost of insurance.
Okay.
If you're restoring a vehicle and pumping 3 million into it, you definitely want the valuation when you go to the insurance to be above that 3 million shillings, so that in case of anything, it's taken care of. So factoring in insurance at maybe 3 or 4% of 3 to 5 million, you're looking at what, maybe 150 to 250,000 in insurance. So most people will do all this, realize, why am I paying so much on insurance for an old car? Then they end up going third party.
After pumping 3 million into the car,
stolen, it gets totaled. Sorry?
Third party, and they've pumped in 3 million into the car.
Insurance is a whole different topic on its own here.
Yes.
I think there are people who do not understand what comprehensive coverage really means. There are people who want to just do the bare minimum when it comes to the law, and they forget that insurance is a necessary evil to protect your assets, so to speak, so that in case of anything, you get good compensation for that.
Okay.
So yeah, if you haven't planned for all that, all those financial burdens, then like you said, like Steve said, some people will end up abandoning these cars.
There's a question here, Steve. Somebody's asking, can classic cars be a business, a good business, where you buy and restore and sell? Like you said, in some of these shows we see on online and on some of our TV stations, sometimes they get an old car, they restore it, they sell it for a lot of money. Is that workable in this country? Are we there yet?
I think you've answered the question already by asking it. I don't think we are there yet as a country. I've gotten such suggestions several times, but I don't think we're there yet as a country, because everybody has a different taste. And as for Kenyans, where based on our culture and where we are right now, it's very hard for me to see why Dan put in 3 million shillings in a Beetle and be willing to pay him 5 million for it. But if I was the one doing it and spent the 3 million, I would be able to justify it. So that model we see on TV, that people buy cars, do a few upgrades on it and flip it for a profit, is not a really practical scenario yet in the country. Yeah,
that's why you are saying it has to be like it's a love relationship. You have to love this car. In fact, I have got Phoebe from Nyeri who's saying, that restoration sounds very painful. Is there ever time to do anything else? Do you guys get time to do anything else, Steve?
Yes. Actually, I have guys who, I wanted to jump in when Dan was saying, if you're in the garage every week, that there's a problem. I wanted to jump in and say, for some men, it's therapy.
Being in the garage?
Yes, like spa, like the way women go to the salon to do their nails and hair every weekend. For men, I have guys who come to the workshop and they just set up their tent, come with their drinks and sit there. They're not working on the car, but they are just away. It's their getaway. It's it's fun.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think for some men it is therapeutic, but I mean, if it's you're coughing out money every weekend on your vehicle, that's a different class from those people who are just coming in to take in the oil fumes and kick back with that.
you know, I've also realized we give this car names. Just like Steve said, it's a love relationship. Dan, gari yako umepatia jina gani?
I don't think I have attached that much importance with vehicles.
Okay.
So I don't name my vehicles at all because I think to me, putting that much importance sometimes is a setup for heartbreak, because now imagine you worked on your
yes.
You attach that much importance, and some kids playing in the neighborhood just pick up a stone and start writing their names on there. Your daughter one day picks up your a nail and draws "I love you, Daddy" from boot to bonnet. Now, if you've attached that much importance to it that you even named your vehicle, your reaction is going to be different as compared to somebody who knows that at the end of the day, this is vanity. I mean, ni mambo ya dunia, life has more important things than this. So I think, to me, that's just my thinking when it comes to vehicles, not attaching your entire soul to it.
Okay. Can this be an addiction, Steve? Because I know you probably know some people. I know people. We have the same love for Volkswagens, and we belong to the same WhatsApp group. And I know some people who have got 15, 16 Volkswagens that they're planning to work on. And I'm thinking, when will you work on them? And they don't want to sell them either. So I'm just wondering, can this attachment turn into an addiction? An expensive addiction?
Very much so. There's a guy who texted you, they're called Japs.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a conversation with him some years ago, and it was those ones of, look, I think you've gotten addicted to these cars, and it's dangerous, because he had started piling up cars.
Yeah.
And he would say, I'll work on this, and I'll work on this, I'll work on this sometime. But the reality is, it's literally impossible to work on two cars at the same time. Like, you're restoring two cars, it's literally impossible. It's very expensive if you're going to do it right, unless you're going to cheapo on processes and parts. So, like, eventually he got the point, and he let go of most of them. So I think it's an addiction that you should check, because there's always that temptation and what do you call it? Like tama, yeah. Like especially with VW, there are so many models which are collectible. Like, I want that one, and that's one of the aspects. My wife really came out strongly, and there's a time I almost bought another Kombi.
Yeah.
Which was bought by actually one of my friends. I normally see it with him, and she asked me, "Why do you want to buy that Kombi?" I told her I want to buy a touring car now for going for road trips.
Yeah.
But she's like, "No, what's wrong with our Joyce? We can spend that money, improve it a little bit, and make it do the same thing that the same utility you'd get from buying an extra car." So it's a very dangerous addiction that, if not checked, can spiral out of control.
There's a message here.
Yeah, I think there's also something with men doing something and succeeding. It always encourages you to do more, because you did the first one, it worked out great. Now maybe we can do a second one. That achievement, I think, is usually what gives most men that adrenaline that eventually leads to that addiction.
Listen to this message, yeah? It says, good morning. In regards to these old cars, building up old cars, I've done that, been there, got the T-shirt and the bumper sticker as well. One thing to remember, if you put makeup on an old lady, doesn't mean she becomes a young lady. She remains an old lady. This is Niels from Mombasa. Where, Niels, you're comparing old cars to old ladies. You want to get into trouble. There's that myth. Maybe, Steve, you can take this question, because many times when people ask me about Volkswagens and what, I usually share your story, because you went on a road trip in your Volkswagen Kombi, original engine, no modifications. I think you went all the way to did you get to South Africa? Where did you go to?
We got to Zimbabwe.
Uh-huh.
On that trip, we did 12,000 kilometers.
What?
Without a single breakdown, without having to have any delay. The only thing we were thinking about was where to fuel, because sometimes you don't know, you really know where the next fueling station is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would be like 600 kilometers away. And surprisingly, we never ran out of fuel or got grounded. So I think that's a myth that an old car cannot deliver like a new car. If it's been serviced well, and some of these old cars were really designed really well.
Yeah.
They were ahead of their time. They used very robust parts, and they can actually go places where newer cars can't go.
This is a message here that says, hi, Pasi, thank you. I'm loving the show. Steve helped me to get mine where it is today, a Volkswagen Combi 72. A big shout out to Musa, who was my mechanic when I got it. We managed to get it to a daily run. I'm happy to have been an inspiration to many when they saw it on the road daily. COVID came and I feel bad that I left her for a mini, but she will be back. Asante sana. Japs, you're sending in another SMS talking about the VW club. Aya, sawa sawa. I'm just wondering, are there ladies who have this hobby? Because most of the time I meet men, Dan. Are there ladies who love classic cars? I was hoping a lady would send an SMS. No lady has sent in an SMS. Or is it just men?
It's at the point where it's cuts across. There are, I think, if you go to a Concours Elegance event, you will find that some of those old cars, those classics, those are not old cars, those are classics. You find that some of those classics are owned by ladies. And I think they tend to also have a better eye for detail when you look at those ladies that have gone into it as compared to men. So yes, ladies also are in that same boat as well when it comes to owning and restoring and keeping and maintaining classic cars.
Steve, as we finish, because we are almost out of time, I know you have you've taken your car to various car shows, both locally and across the borders. What does it take, and what does it cost to be able to restore a car to the level where it can be entered into some of these car competitions?
The first question I normally get when I take one of my cars for the competitions is there a monetary kickback?
Yeah.
Do you get when you win? Do you get some money to like soften what? And I normally tell people whatever we win as prize money does not even scratch what we put into the car. Like Dan had said earlier, it's either you have the time or you have the money to get someone to do it. And either way, it's really, really, really expensive. Because sometimes if you can enter a car 2 years in a row and you have to change almost all the aesthetic parts. It's a really, really expensive venture. And if you are going to take that route, it's a completely different route from having a toy that probably would want to be taking out on weekends or to use as a daily driver. Those are completely different directions, depending on now what you'd want to work for you.
Dan, anything to add to that?
Just to say that the difference between driving from Kenya to Zimbabwe and going to the garage every weekend usually is having Steve restore your vehicle for 3 million or going to Girogoni and having a few metal old parts beat into it. So I think it's important to know how long you're planning on keeping this car, and that should. Either way, if you're going into restoring a classic, you really should be doing it the right way. So do your math from the beginning, from the get-go. Do your due diligence so that you're able to get something that, even as somebody said, is it a viable business?
Yeah. That
when you're putting it out there, eventually when you want to let it go, everybody's like, wow, this is. I can pay good money for this.
In fact, on that aspect, Dan, one of the common things I've also seen in that area is. There's always a different part that can work. people want to do all sorts of modifications. So-and-so told me and so-and-so told me. And I've seen people get into trouble. I've also gotten into trouble because so-and-so told me if you buy this part for this other model and put it, it's cheaper and it can work. Maybe you can say something about that.
It can work, but for how long is the question. When a vehicle is engineered, all the parts are designed specifically for that particular vehicle system. And putting parts from other vehicles, sometimes, yes, is viable, but sometimes it works for a while, but causes greater damage over time. So that's something to consider as well. And cheap is expensive at the end of the day. It's not just a cliche phrase. It actually is a fact when it comes to. I mean, it's the difference between even the let's call it the daily drivers. You put in spark plugs, what 6,000, and those will probably take you 15,000-20,000 kilometers, and some people are putting in spark plugs every 3,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to that 2,000 kilometer mark from the time you put them in, you don't even have power in your vehicle. So what is it costing you as you drive? Because that now brings in fuel efficiency. You're paying more for fuel as compared to if you put in actual genuine parts that which are designed for that vehicle and therefore give you better fuel economy. And sometimes when if it's the metal parts, if it's springs, shock absorbers, the comfort of the ride also varies. So I think I agree with Steve on putting in the correct parts for the correct vehicle, so that you replace the part once and, where possible, buy brand new parts.
Okay.
The bad thing about used parts is you never know how far they are in their lifetime, because you might buy something that's 70% spent and pay almost money for the new part. So after a short while, you're back there, this thing broke down again. So if possible, save up, take that 12 years or 13 years, as you said about someone, and get the right parts, and it will serve you well.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm out of time. What's your parting shot, Steve?
Do your research before you get into restoring a car. Know what you want to buy, what you'll use it for, and what are the pros and cons. Ask around. Information is free.
Awesome. Dan, parting shot.
Follow your passion when it comes to restoring vehicles, but I strongly agree with Steve on this one. Do your due diligence, do your research so that you also don't overpay on what you're trying to put together. And in the end, you as somebody said, I think one of the guests before said, your vehicle should be a joy and not a pain.
Me, I'll add another parting shot. If you're married, talk to your wife first. Get her on board. It's easier and it's more fun if she's on board. As we finish, a couple of SMSs coming in. Stephen, Mr. Banita Van, thank you for SMSing today. You say, I really envy the people who restore them like my Banita Van. When I bought it, the owner thought I was just helping junk out of his garage. When I went for the documents, he nearly refused because when he saw the bus, he didn't believe it. Steve really helps us. VW diehard. Steve, naona uko na CV mzuri hapa hivi. People are saying you do a good job. There's one more here. This one says, I'm loving the show. I'm also a VW enthusiast. I'm so attached to my old VW van. I find it hard to let go. Interesting show today. Only men SMS'd apart from Phoebe in Nyeri. It is only men who SMS today. Usually it's the ladies who send in a lot of text messages. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. My time is up. Tutakutana garage, na tent, na kiti. We enjoy the weekend. Well, that's all for today on The Financial Clinic. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.
For this and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs, from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.